partner. Come on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Untitled Marvel Project. I'm your host, Tanner Dykstra. I'm joined by two goofy fellas, Tucker Hazel and Abram Buhner. This is the show where we rank and review every single MCU film, except, of course, today we are continuing our journey, ranking and reviewing all the live-action Spider-Man films leading up to Spider-Man No Way Home, because we might get some crossover. You know, we wrapped up the Raimi trilogy last time with an hour-long epic review of the much contended against Spider-Man 3, and this time we're moving on to a franchise.
Go watch that. Great discussion.
A great discussion.
Video.
We're moving on this time to a franchise where the best thing you can say about it is, I mean, the first one's all right. That is the highlight of the conversation that I've heard with The Amazing Spider-Man 2012's.
That's of course what we're here to discuss today. Is that statement even true? Is that the best you can say about this universe, about this series? I don't think so. But of course, we want to hear your thoughts. I'm doing the fucking plugs.
Oh, I see.
We want to hear your thoughts.
You
I'm
got hijacked.
I'm hijacking this fucking intro.
Go!
We want to hear your thoughts about the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Of course, there's a possibility that you disagree with the thoughts we're sharing here, but we are a couple of genuine folks, and we're open to discussion. Our minds are to be melded by you, the audience. So join our Discord to discuss Amazing Spider-Man, all these Spider-Man movies, all these other bullshit that we talk about. And of course, subscribe to Backlog Banter, because we are going to be continuing this journey forever, presumably, you know?
Welcome to our many, many new subscribers.
To infinity or and beyond. I think that's the line from this movie.
Well, speaking of that, I just think that right off the bat, we should just say, as people with a YouTube channel, a good YouTube channel, I think we have a moral obligation
yes.
to discuss this movie.
I think
our ability to be good people.
We have a moral obligation to do good things.
Yes.
If you are a good person and if you have the ability to do some things that would benefit people, then you have a moral obligation to do those things to help those people. If only there was a more concise way to say that.
Editing man Tanner, I'd like you to throw up the meme that Abram sent last night in our memes chat or backlot or something.
I'll look at it later. But yes, I will.
It was on the screen. I hope you guys laughed at that.
Wow, look how funny that meme is. Abram is truly a meme lord. Okay, that's enough faffing about. Let's get to The Amazing Spider-Man. Bad movie by all accounts. I really didn't like this. I had never seen it before, not even in my early infancy when I would have been 11 when this movie came out.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, this is a bad movie.
Tanner finally stopped using diapers at age 12.
Oh.
It was,
some say, that's a contentious issue.
There have been reports. Let me check my files. Yeah.
For me, it was a bad sign, Tanner, when we got to the second shot of young Peter playing hide and seek, and I already thought to myself, I don't care.
Yeah.
Is that your beginning thoughts of this? Because I'd really like to hear your thoughts, because we obviously watched it together, Tanner and I. So, Aaron Buhner, I got a little bit of updates through Discord messages of what you were thinking about this movie, but I really want to hear your grand scale epic thoughts of The Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah,
I think this movie is oppressively misguided.
Wow,
that's how I would put it. I don't think it does anything that's especially well. I think it does certain things that are just egregious that I want to discuss. But I think on the whole, the product that is The Amazing Spider-Man is so fine that it becomes offensive.
Yeah,
sure.
I really don't like Spider-Man 3, Raimi Spider-Man 3, but there was a creative vision there. And so I have a lot more respect for a bad movie that swings and misses than a movie that does absolutely nothing. And that's what this movie does. And what is frustrating is I think it has some really good ideas. I like the idea of, Peter, this kind of, we'll talk about this version of Peter.
We'll talk about it.
But a Peter who is going, telling Gwen Stacy, hey, I'm Spider-Man. And there are interesting character moments here, but they're just squandered by just a film that just lies on top of them. It doesn't move. It just lies there.
Yeah, it's like a Snorlax of film.
Yes, it's so fucking boring. That's the biggest takeaway. It's like if you asked a Nolan impersonator to make Nolan's version of Sam Raimi's movies.
Good God.
I think
like 3 steps removed from a creative vision.
Here's what I was thinking about, and I just recognized this, earlier this afternoon while I was thinking about this movie. I think this is what people who hate Marvel movies see when they watch like an MCU film.
That's certainly
just
possible, yeah.
A complete lack of style or even substance, really. I think this really put me in that mind space of like, oh, this is what people think of MCU movies, which is a really interesting thing. But Tucker, I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I just think this movie is bland. It lacks any particular kind of personality. I think it attempts to have personality in sort of this quick editing, edgy jokes, sort of this ain't your fucking grandma's Spider-Man. This ain't your Aunt May's Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it works with that, and I think that actually in some ways takes away from the relatability of Peter Parker as a character and sort of makes him this otherworldly, ridiculous guy that I don't know if I would want to really interact with. And that sort of applies to every facet of this film. Like there is an attempt to be different, but I think in that attempt, it kind of just becomes homogenized with the other sort of edgy, flashy action movies of that time, like the commercials that we were seeing, the advertisements on the DVD that we got from the library of Men in Black 3 and fucking
Premium Rush.
Premium Rush. Like, yeah, flashy editing, edgy jokes, really obnoxious like sound cues and stuff like that. I really think this movie is bad because it's so bland and lifeless and sterile.
Can we start with the tone? Is that an okay place to begin?
Why not?
Why not?
Because this movie gets off to a bad start. But I think what really catalyzed the fact that this movie has no fucking idea what it's trying to do, and it does not succeed at its own at the creation of a tone or the semblance of humor, is when the board of the fucking board of people who made this movie in a lab decided, it'd be really funny. What if Peter gains his spider powers, and then the big funny joke is that he sexually assaults a woman on a subway?
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, also assaults like 6 other guys in that same sequence.
And that's supposed to be funny. I don't understand what we were trying to accomplish with this movie tonally, and I don't understand how anybody thought they were achieving what they wanted.
Let me say something. In a similar setting, Joaquin Phoenix's The Joker is a better person in protecting a woman on a subway from drunk guys than Peter Parker is.
That's a great point.
He at least tries to step in between or whatever, and he eventually shoots those guys. But yeah, Peter Parker is just a fuck up in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do think that the tone is that sort of big issue that I was getting at. The fact that there is that attempt at personality that is sort of just trying to be not the Raimi films, not the sort of nerdy Peter Parker who's, poor and down on his luck. No, this is the cool guy. He's smart. He's relatively confident with females, but he is getting picked on for fucking whatever reason. Like the fact that he's getting bullied doesn't really track with the world of the film that they've created for this character. But he does just feel the problem with Peter, and I think the tone is that he just feels detached from everything else. Like he doesn't have a Harry Osborn to ground him. He tangentially knows Gwen Stacy through like 3 meetings and they start making out. He has half of a connection to Aunt May. His connection with Ben is actually a part of this movie that I do think works. But that's the only thing. And of course he dies. So the weak web of connections, pun intended, of connections to this character makes him not very interesting. And underneath that sort of, it's this edgy tone, it really makes him even less likable.
The thing is, I think Tucker brings up an interesting point in how they connect Peter Parker to the story of a Spider-Man movie, which is a weird thing to have to say they failed at this, kind of, is that there's such a weird decision in here, is that they decide to make his parents the one who were developing the super spiders and stuff like that, and his dad has a secret briefcase that's hidden in the floorboards or whatever, and they're being hunted down by... They have to leave the house for some reason.
It's like the beginning of Black Widow, except for less clear.
Exactly. And I think it's so weird that, I think the charm of Peter Parker is that he's just an everyday kid. He's maligned against, he's bullied, he's sort of, he doesn't have parents, but his Aunt May and Uncle Ben sort of act as his stand-in parents, but he's sort of been downtrodden from the start, and then he gets these fantastical abilities that allow him to be a good person and act in good ways. This fails in that by just making him destined to be Spider-Man, that his parents were working on the Spider-Man thing, and I think they expand on this quite a bit in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but we'll see next week.
I don't necessarily hate the idea of taking that character in a different direction. I just think that the way that it's handled here is so poor. It ends up relying so much on convenience and a really convoluted narrative and I think great opportunity to segue into the reptile or no, the lizard is his name, I think, right?
No,
Yes,
let's
of
call
course.
him the reptile.
That's the Spider-Man villain, but this is
Yeah.
not the lizard.
He's a lino, a lizard in name only.
Okay.
Yeah.
um, but it's all so haphazard in its construction because it sets up this idea about Peter's parents, but then in such a blatant sequel bait, the movie ends by there's the fucking voicemail from Uncle Ben.
Yes.
It's like, Peter, you have to live with all these unanswered questions in your life, which is really just the film refusing to address the plot that it's setting up, which makes so much what happens in this movie feel completely pointless because we start to learn that maybe the lino here is actually the responsible for the death of his parents, but that doesn't get addressed. There's all of these plot threads that are picked up and then just dropped, but not in a way that for me as an audience member made me want to watch the sequel, but just made me feel like we were wasting so much screen time when we begin to develop this relationship between Peter and these other characters, and then just say, man, it really is hard when you don't get answers to questions.
Hey.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Peter Parker? Because I think we've neglected to talk about Andrew Garfield in this role. I like Andrew Garfield. He's probably one of my favorite modern working actors. And I really don't like him in The Amazing Spider-Man as Peter Parker. He is bland as hell. He is, people always praise like him and Emma Stone's chemistry in this, but even because they were about to date or already dating at the time or something like that. But it is borderline non-existent. He is mumbling his way through most of these lines. He doesn't have like an ounce of like the cheesiness or anything that Tobey Maguire has, mostly because they're trying to make him like cool to like but not ironically cool like they were trying to do in Spider-Man 3 with like emo Peter. They're trying to make him like, yeah, teenagers actually want to be this guy. He skateboards. He listens to indie music. He has a Rear Window poster in his room. He has all this stuff, and he wears glasses, but he's also a cool guy, and he's got sweet hair, and also he builds stuff, and he takes vintage photos with his antique camera and stuff like that.
Holy shit, he's Timo.
Yeah, exactly. He's exactly like
if
Timo
Timo
Nelson.
Skateboarded and had better hair.
Yeah.
And dead parents.
But regardless,
I will kill Timo's parents to make him Spider-Man.
It all just falls flat on its face because in trying to make him interesting by like a committee of Sony executives, like what do kids like these days?
Yeah.
It just makes him bland as all hell.
I think it speaks to the problem of nobody around him giving him anything to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't hate the idea that this is like a kind of like Vogue Peter who's cool, who's like conventionally attractive and in clubs and stands up for people. Like
he's a really conventionally attractive 28-year-old man.
He is
who is playing presumably a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
He is basically a Sigma male, and I'm only kind of joking about that. And that's kind of how they portray him. He's like, oh, I'm gonna stand up for people, and I'm gonna sneak into these places, and I've got confidence and smarts, but I'm a lone wolf. But it doesn't matter. That's the thing. It doesn't matter because there's no tension between him and Flash. Sure, there's some perfunctory sequences because there has to be stuff between Peter and Flash or between him and Gwen, but he never has to be challenged on who he is.
No.
Really.
Yeah, and it's interesting to even pull that through to him becoming Spider-Man and the death of Uncle Ben. Both sequences of which I think are very poorly mishandled. Tanner and I have so many, like a literal list, like a grocery fucking list of issues with the way that Uncle Ben dies, and that ties into the plot and his character and the progression of that whole sequence. Really awful, but I think it all comes back to him not being as relatable and the situation that he's put into not being as interesting because he is confident. He's not the downtrodden guy that's suddenly getting these powers. He's just having a good time with it. And oops, sometimes he rips a thing off the wall, but like, I don't really care because he's not the kind of guy that you connect to under those sequences. And when he like just wants to have a good time with his abilities and starts monkeying around at a fucking abandoned whatever this shit and is like climbing up walls and doing fucking half pipes on the inside of a boat or whatever, I'm just like, this doesn't feel celebratory. It doesn't feel like a coming of age moment or like exciting moment for this character. He's just happy he got a kiss or whatever I can't remember that came after, but like those sequences play out so poorly that I just have no reason to want to connect to this character.
Mhm.
You're muted.
Yeah,
You
Abrams
fucking guy.
muted.
Classic moment.
I actually like the sequence of him skating around. That to me, there are moments of fun here, and I don't necessarily think that a Spider-Man has to be
Goes
fun.
on for like 10 minutes though.
It's
It-
and there's
it
that
does,
weird
but-
song with it too.
And I also like it's kind of hokey, but just like Peter skating, he's having fun. I don't think that's necessarily bad. But what I take more issue with is the way that it's not really development for him, right?
Yeah.
It just
I think that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
not celebratory. It doesn't feel like we earned this moment of him being
Sure.
happy because he was he was having the Parker luck for the whole point, so he can finally let loose and have some fun. He's been
Mhm.
letting loose and having fun the entire movie up to this point.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but that speaks to the bigger problem of Peter not having to earn anything. Like
Sure.
he finds the briefcase, and then the big problem is they can't solve the decay equation.
Mhm.
So Peter just
Tells them
solves
it.
the decay equation.
Well, no, the thing is, and this is another issue I have, and it ties into like his parents thing and him being destined to have all these things. He doesn't solve the equation himself. He finds out that his dad solved it and tells Kurt Connors. He doesn't design.
He lies about that. He's like,
Yeah, he
"Oh,
lies.
I'm just a fucking math wizard. Oh,
Yeah.
here's the answer that you guys have been studying for 10 years.
He doesn't build his web. He doesn't design his web shooters. He
Web
finds
fluid.
web
Doesn't design
fluid.
Web fluid. Yeah.
He finds a formula for it or whatever and just makes it. We're being told that he's the sciencey Peter Parker. He's the math guy Peter Parker. But like
Peter Parker.
this guy is a Peter Parker. Let me tell you. But like he doesn't go. They don't go all the way because they're tied to this thing of like, and he has super secret spy parents and stuff, and it just sucks. But I do want to talk about the Uncle Ben thing because Tucker brought it up and we made fun of this. So I think I'd like to walk down the path of how Uncle Ben dies in this movie because he's much more involved in this story, which is good if it paid off in his death in an interesting way. So Ben gets mad at Peter because he forgot to pick up his aunt because he was too busy or aunt, excuse me.
He was out there helping Kurt Connors, I believe, right?
Oh, I thought that came after
That's
the
why
scene
he
when
was
he was
busy.
fucking shredding it up.
No.
Oh, okay.
He was in the lab.
He was in the
He
lab.
was muted again.
It
Okay.
doesn't matter. I'm
Okay.
gonna see. It's either I get accidentally mute myself or a cough in microphone. Both are terrible. But it's just
Okay.
it's after he doesn't pick up the voicemail when he's at the lab.
Yeah,
Oh,
Which
that's
again,
true. Okay.
why does he not communicate that? I've got a job. Why wouldn't you share that? There's
Yeah.
No, he doesn't have. I don't think he has a job. I think he's just helping Connors in his free time. Like Connors just allows him to come into the lab. Like doesn't tell his boss or like get any
Yeah.
safety regulations or
The
like
thing is,
he's just working on these super secret ultra things that are going to change the fate of humanity. It's like this high school kid's pretty cool.
yeah, this is a small
Come
thing
work with
too,
me.
but it shows the lack of setup and payoff because they set up like you can't sneak into Oscorp stuff. They'll literally drag you out by the collar, and then Peter just continually sneaks into Oscorp without a badge or anything like that. Kurt Connors just brings him in. But anyway, so he gets back from work with Kurt Connors. Uncle Ben's mad because he didn't pick up Aunt May. Aunt May's like, chill out, Uncle Ben. Peter storms out because he's edgy. He's an edgy teen with lots of angst.
I honestly don't know why he's upset in that sequence. He messed up. He didn't follow the instructions that Ben and May gave him, and they were rightfully upset with her. Like there's a weird conflict between Ben and May about her like being able to handle herself, but like he didn't listen, and so like it makes sense that he's being berated for it. And then he's like, but you told me, told me that great power is great responsibility. But I wanted my dad to tell me that.
Well,
You're
oh,
not my
yeah.
dad.
He is-
And he storms out of the fucking building.
This super weird thing where he's like, yeah, well, if your dad told me that, I wish if my dad told you that, I wish he was here. And that's what causes Peter to storm out of the house.
But it doesn't make sense in the context of the scene, but it also doesn't make sense in the context of the movie up until this point because Peter explicitly tells Uncle Ben that he is a good dad, unprompted. He explicitly does that. It's a conflict that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, they have a good relationship. Presumably, he would be very okay with hearing these sort of things from his father figure that he has a great relationship with.
And if that wasn't dumb enough, the following events get even exponentially more stupid.
Well, he
So-
gets angry. And you know what he needs to quell his fucking seething rage? Chalky.
He needs a yoo-hoo. He just really wants a yoo-hoo. Well, first he cries on a bridge or whatever. He sits up in the little bar of a bridge and cries. But he's like, I need some chalky milk right now. So he goes to get some chalky milk at the gas station. The gas station attendant is an asshole to him because he doesn't have 2 cents. And he's like, sorry, buddy, can't get your chocolate milk. Your daddy didn't give you enough money for milk. And Peter's like, fine. So he walks away, and then he stands there for some reason, just off to the side of the counter, and sees the guy get robbed.
He's like fiddling with his cash or his phone
Yeah.
or whatever, just by the side. What the fuck?
And the robber gives him his chocolate milk. He like tosses it to him, and he's out the door or whatever. And then they're out on the street, and the store clerk says, "Hey, stop that guy! He stole my money or whatever." And then Peter has some half-hearted line that's less iconic than the "I fail." I don't see it. What is it? What's the Raimi line?
Couldn't tell you.
Well, that's the thing. It is the Raimi scene, but just done so much worse.
Yes.
The Raimi line is something like, I don't know how that.
Not my problem.
Not my problem is essentially what it is.
Boils down to that.
It boils down to that. But in this one, it's like it was chocolate milk or something. I don't know. But anyway, I butchered that. But here we go. The guy's running across the street. Uncle Ben's there. He's walking down the street looking for Peter Parker. The guy trips.
Wandering the streets of New York. Where could he go? Who the fuck
I'm
knows?
looking for my nephew. The guy trips. His gun flies onto the street. Uncle Ben, biggest brain move right here. He's like, I'm getting that gun. Dives for it and gets shot. And that's how he dies. Uncle Ben dies over...
You're missing a part of that struggle there is he's like grappling with the offender while the guy's pointing a gun at his stomach. He's like, no, I'll take this gun from you. And he's like fucking trying to wrestle him. And he's like, oh, well, the gun went off into your stomach because the guy was pointing a gun at you.
Mm-hmm. Uncle Ben dies over 2 cents and some spilled chocolate milk is essentially what goes down there. And
no element of that scene is satisfying.
No.
Or honestly very logical. When you really think about the progression of why the great power, great responsibility, Death of Uncle Ben thing works for Spider-Man as a character and has for fucking generations now, it's because Peter makes that mistake for personal gain. He makes the mistake because he's getting the money, because he's doing whatever that is him pushing back against the world, but still trying to be helpful, be good guy Peter Parker. He does this all over, legitimately, literally 2 cents and a bottle of chocolate milk, which has no connection to him being Spider-Man. It has no connection to him being a good guy or a bad guy or morality or anything like that. It's just like, no, I didn't stop a criminal because the guy had a gun and was a criminal. And I wanted my chocolate milk, and you're an asshole to me. Like, there's so many layers there that are peeled away to this bare bones motivation for the character that really, really flounders, and I think is one of the worst parts of the movie.
My thing is, I don't understand why they even bothered killing Uncle Ben. If they don't care to change who Peter is fundamentally about the parents and all of this shit, just drop Uncle Ben entirely. Because I honestly, like, Uncle Ben is a good man. He wants to try to stop this criminal. He goes to try to take this gun away. For me, that was fine. My bigger problem is, why even kill Uncle Ben? Because it doesn't really motivate Peter afterwards. Yes, he goes after people with long hair, and we'll
profiles.
Talk about
We'll
talk about that. But the actual death of Uncle Ben leads to very little character growth.
Yeah,
it leads to basically nothing with Aunt May. Aunt May does not take very long to seemingly get over it.
She can't sleep or whatever, but that's like a offline that doesn't contribute to their relationship in any way.
I think it's pointless.
Yeah, Abram brings up a good point about how there's little development for Peter, and I'm going to use that to talk about how he just becomes Spider-Man.
Yes.
Like, he just he is running around as some schmuck with a red ski mask and Oakley sunglasses and a beanie, and then like 10 minutes later, we're on the bridge. All right, he sees the lizard. He's saving people from cars and stuff like that. There's
really no progression there. I remember Abram talking about how he had an issue with, in Captain America, him not getting used to his powers and just instantly becoming Captain America. And like, there's things to be said there. And we had the conversation about the inherent morality of Steve Rogers that allows him to fulfill that role or whatever. But the problem with this Peter Parker is that you see him being a good person in sequences, stopping a bully, but otherwise he's kind of just doing edgy stuff that's sort of going against the grain and stopping criminals, but he's doing it by like beating them the fuck up and ignoring the cops and like doing it in the edgiest way he can, so that when he becomes full-on Spider-Man who's saving people on a bridge and stopping a supervillain and stuff like that, the leap in in logic from this is what this Peter Parker Spider-Man is to no, this is the Spider-Man that we know is
Mhm.
so huge that it's kind of a whiplash moment. I'm like,
Yes.
oh shit, okay, he made a suit. Oh, and now he's on the bridge saving people. Like,
Yeah.
it's a really big jump.
And he gets thrown into the deep end with the Lizard, who I'd also like to talk about a little bit. But Abram, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's not very good. I mean, it leads into the profiling bit, which really does not make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And I don't ultimately know if the guy with the tattoo on his wrist comes back as a villain in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I actually haven't seen that movie. But as it stands, like
I functionally haven't seen it. My eyes have perceived that film, but
okay, Peter is supposed to have to deal with the fact he never caught the killer. All right, but ultimately, that means at the beginning of his time as Peter, as Spider-Man, is spent just beating up the same type of guy, not really servicing New York. He doesn't, and then yeah, he saves the kid and has a conversation in the bleachers with Gwen about, I have to be Spider-Man now. Those people would have died without me.
Mm-hmm.
But he never really like has to reconcile the fact that he didn't really care about that before. There is just a major.
well, I think
disconnect.
that's because the character and the writing don't make that an issue. He should be wrestling with that. There should be a moment like
It's a script.
a come to exactly. There should be a come to Jesus moment of I can use my abilities to save people. I should do this, and then afterward wrestling like, wait, why the fuck did I care about that before? Like, oh, okay, Uncle Ben's death meant this to me, whatever. But there's like 3 jumps there that means bop, 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 3 different plot points that aren't really interconnected. It's just the Spider-Man story, which is kind of how I feel like of a lot of elements of this film is, of course, I'm trying to do them differently. And I do agree with Abram. Some of those different ideas of building his relationship with Uncle Ben more, including Gwen Stacy instead of MJ, no Harry, no, like there's ideas here that could work if they were fleshed out into their own version of this story. But it does feel like they're just trying to do a Spider-Man story to make a Spider-Man story and use the bare bones of what makes Spider-Man work to tell a somewhat functional script. It doesn't feel like they have a interesting Spider-Man story to tell.
Before we get to the Lizard, talking about the suit for me is a perfect opportunity to talk about the fundamental filmmaking construction of this movie just for a second.
Okay, go for
it. Because the first person scene...
Channel Timo Nelson.
Yes, here we go.
The first person swinging into the building for the reflection of the suit is terrible. I think that was awesome. I hate the first person. I think that the cuts to first person add nothing but other than disorientation.
Sure.
And I think that on the whole that this film is ugly. I think this movie is ugly. It is the extreme of the Zack Snyder problem of everything is cast in shadow, but here it's everything is cast basically to silhouette. And there are a couple nice shots. Like I like the shot of him. We'll get to his thing in the sewer with the cameras and the strings, which I still do not understand what he was trying to accomplish there. But that's a nice shot of like looking down on him. There are some nice moments here, but I think the film is really ugly. There is I don't feel any awe when I look at Spider-Man in any of the sequences.
Yeah, I mean, there's some shots where like, he's silhouetted against the moon or whatever, and they do like the slow-mo, like he goes into a Spider-Man pose. And
those just feel like they're the moments you're supposed to be like, ooh, but the rest of it is so lacking in that that it's like, okay, I guess they're trying to focus your attention to these like perfectly constructed, like comic book accurate framed shots, but those happen like 4 times, maybe 5 times throughout the entire course of the film.
As well as the fact that I will compliment this movie and Andrew Garfield in that his casting physicality-wise was good, because I like that he's like a lanky, skinny Peter Parker.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he does look good when he's doing his poses and he's swinging around. Like, he does this pose after he saves the kid where he's like perching on the edge of the bridge. And I'm like, that's a Spider-Man pose. I do think he looks good in that position. I think
he does the Spider-Man PS4 loading screen. I didn't realize that's where this came from. Literally, one of the last shots of the film is he gets into that pose.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the ending of this movie because I think it's terrible.
Okay, we'll get to
Tanner,
it.
You're the host here. I don't want to steal your show.
I think we can do that if we talk about the Lizard and the Lizard's plan. The Lizard sucks, by the way. Give Lizard a snout, have him actually wear a lab coat rather than just in fleeting moments where you're like, hey, get it? It's like the one the Lizard wears a lab coat. I'm like, yeah, but that's the character you're doing. Don't just like reference him a little bit. Do the character.
I think my biggest problem with the Lizard is not that I don't think Kurt Connors is an interesting character, that his conflict or his motivations don't make a lot of sense, but the version of this character that they decided to create for this film is a hodgepodge of different ideas. It's Jekyll and Hyde sort of weird chemistry thing that's turning him into this, but he
stealing
wants
from
to,
Willem
but
Dafoe in Raimi Spider-Man, by the way. Yeah.
And as I was getting to, also stealing from that Green Goblin storyline of there's a voice in his head that's convincing him to do it, and so that muddles his motivation, and then his fucking plan is just absolutely ludicrous and like comes out of left field. But I really think he's one of the least compelling villains, not because I don't like the actor or anything, but there's so many jumps in what this character is doing and the point that this character is trying to get across that I just at the end feel like he fought a CGI monster that meant fucking nothing.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating.
I don't even like Kurt Connors here. I don't think his motive. Here's the thing. First of all, he lost his arm. Okay, interesting. How did he lose his arm? Why do we care?
Unclear. Yeah, no, that's true.
None of that is set up. Then there's the plot line that he has to finish his serum so that Norman Osborn doesn't die. That doesn't even really make sense.
Wait, what? I forgot about that.
Yeah, we don't see Norman Osborn in this movie.
No, we only see his liaison. But there's also a really bizarre line of dialogue when Kurt Connors just refuses to rush to human trials. The guy is like, now we're in the same position we were in with Dick Parker 15 years ago. So is the insinuation that Harry Osborn has been dying for a fucking decade and a half? like what is the pressure here?
Yeah.
We've got this one gentleman, this nice Indian gentleman in a suit.
The guy from Jurassic World.
He's like, finish your serum, and then they don't, and he says, well, you're gonna get in trouble if you don't. it means nothing. It's artificial stakes. Again, it comes down to a bad script. I think basically all of this film's problems come back to a bad script.
Yeah.
And I think the reptile is the biggest symptom of that.
Because, of course, his plan is to turn the entirety of New York City into lizards. He loves lizards so much, he's like, everybody wants to be a lizard. Lizards are the best.
No, he has this moment where he's recording himself, and he's like, oh man, humans fucking suck. They're little bitches. I wish they were actually lizards. And then he's like, and he pushes the camera. He's like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, that motivation comes out of nowhere for that character. Of course, we see Kurt Connors like combing over lizards a couple times. Like, man, lizards are the best. Peter's like, how would an apex predator catch a lizard? Reptiles, like, reptiles are actually really cool and they can't get caught. You could not do that.
They're actually way cooler than spiders if you actually think about it. They're actually way cooler. They're way better than spiders in every single way. They can actually kill spiders just by looking at them if you actually know that. That's actually a really cool thing that lizards can do.
Don't you love it how how Peter's identity is uncovered to the reptile, to that awful camera?
Oh yeah.
But I don't even know what the camera was supposed to be doing there.
He's taking pictures for the Daily Bugle so he could get $2,000.
He doesn't work for the Daily.
Is that true?
Daily Bugle.
Yeah, he sees that a newspaper stacked on the ground that says $2,000 for a picture of the lizard monster or whatever, and he's like,
the fact that that's such
a
fleeting moment of the only inclusion of the Daily Bugle in a Spider-Man story, and I honestly didn't even remember that there was like a shot of newspapers on the ground. I have a fucking vague memory now that you're reminding me of it, but makes that scene very confusing, as everyone was saying. Like, he doesn't verbalize anything. Like, he's going into the sewer to shoot webs in like 70 different directions down pipes that like they don't even exist. I don't know how he like got all this stuff to go to the places that he wants to, so that if the lizard like trips one of them, he can trace the vibrations and go catch him. That's what I assume is the plan.
Yes.
But somehow the lizard is very stealthy and he comes down from above, and it's like every part of that plan could be cool if it was executed properly, but then it just turned into an underwater like fight.
Also, why were there so many fucking iguanas?
Apparently lizards, the actual animal lizards, just really like the lizard, and he communicates.
Oh, he loves the lizards. He loves lizards, and lizards love him. I have something in my notes real quick, and I just want to complain about Peter Parker in this. He's such like a weird.
Really, I didn't think you would do that.
He's just such a weird soft boy wiener in this. Like, there's a moment where he's giving Gwen flowers.
He's a
like,
flaccid Peter.
he's a flaccid Peter. He like hides behind the flowers, like he's like, "Oh, I'm so bashful and soft and quirky." And
Remember
I
when he
wanted
shows
to.
up at Oscorp for the first time and he like says something from behind someone else?
Oh, here's the move that he does. Here's the move. So there's like pretend there's a guy in front of me. The crowd parts when he says something smart, and he goes. This guy's head is always on a swivel. He looks like he's doing a Vogue photo shoot. Like I think Abram called him a Vogue Peter earlier because he's always like, yeah. Oh hey Gwen, it's me.
My favorite is after the period cramps my right fellas joke.
Yeah.
Fucking Peter poking out from behind the chair going chocolate
It
house.
is just so like it feels like they're pandering so much because the cool skateboarding parts are probably for like this is for the boys, this is what boys do, and then those parts are like, but he's also a sensitive guy, this is for like the teenage girls in the audience. Don't you want to date Peter Parker? He's such a cute quirky soft boy. I hate him. I had a visceral reaction during that flower scene.
Okay, so we've talked about Peter's weird flower stuff with Gwen and Gwen's period cramps. So I guess we should talk about Gwen herself, who I think is probably the only one that gives any sort of life to this movie. I actually think that this is Emma Stone, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
You're familiar with Emma Stone.
I am. So she does a good job. I think in a movie where everybody thinks they're in a Christopher Nolan movie, she's the only one who is actually trying to have a little bit of fun. Now, I don't think she really does anything. I don't really understand what her role in the storyline is, unfortunately, other than just as an object for Peter, which I'm not a big fan of. She has very little autonomy. She's basically just told what to do by Peter, or is there to fall in love with Peter for basically no reason, just to make him look like more of a mysterious Sigma male Chad. I think her performance and what she's written into the movie to do are so disparate, and that really frustrates me because I think she could give a lot to the role, but there's just nothing for her to give.
Yeah, no, she's definitely one of my favorite actors in this movie. I think that her role works for what that actress we know is capable of giving. I think her and Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben are the two highlights of this film in terms of their performances and how much I appreciate that version of the character. But you're right that she is sort of so backgrounded, and her roles in connections to everyone else makes so little sense that she just serves as this plot progression thing. Is like Peter Parker needs a love interest. Yes. Peter Parker needs someone to help him get into Oscorp. Is sort of, she'll serve that role too. Like she's connected to all these different things that are intended, I think, to create a web of her sort of connecting to everyone else. She connects to Captain Stacy, obviously. She connects to Lizard. She connects to Peter. So like she's actually the kind of the core of it all when you think about it. But the fact that she is so much just a part of the story and not necessarily a character on her own right is what's most frustrating with me. I think the progression of their relationship is one of the worst progressions of meeting to falling in love that I've ever seen. Like they have a snogging sesh on the roof, but that comes after possibly the fourth time they've ever interacted. They meet for the first time in this film. They sort of have a bond in that moment, but not really. And then he sneaks into Oscorp and could possibly get her fired, but she kind of finds that hot. So then when he kind of awkwardly half asks her out, she's like, yes. And then they're just jumping each other's bones after that point.
Yeah, it feels really unearned. Like he just like sort of like, oh, and now he's having dinner at their parents' house, and
that was their first date.
That was their first date.
Actually, wait, like they sat in the bleachers and.
Was
that after? Wait,
he dented the goalpost with that football. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that made
he's
no
very
sense.
out. He's very out and about with his spider abilities in this. He's slam dunking. He's fucking throwing field goals. He is very like just.
He's
open
breaking
with,
field goals.
He's breaking field goals. He's whipping Gwen's skirt towards him or whatever to spin her into him romantically. He's doing all sorts of stuff just like out in the open. But in a lot of ways, it's almost like. Captain Stacy is a more active participant in the story than Gwen Stacy is.
Yeah.
But of course he dies. I think it was a rule for this franchise that they have to kill a member of the Stacy family in every single movie.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert from a movie that came out 9 years ago and is completely obsolete now. But quick thing, by the way, since we all know Gwen Stacy dies in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, sorry if you don't, but there's a really funny moment, if you know that, where he throws her out the window at the high school during that lizard fight and like webs her as she's going down, and her head kind of snaps back as she lands. I'm like, Peter, you're playing with fire there, Peter. Hold on,
So
hang on a
fucking
second.
close. He used that move multiple times in this, and then maybe that's like kind of intended to
He
be
does
like
the
he's
same
building
thing.
his confidence for that move, and so why he wouldn't expect to end up killing Gwen in the next movie. But like that's not made obvious. It's mostly just me like, oh fuck, shouldn't be doing that one, Peter.
I think he does it to that kid too when he whips him out of the car.
yeah, and the kid's like, ooh,
Oof. Yeah.
Abram.
I don't even know what to say at this point. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's a problem.
Okay.
Like Captain Stacy
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
I like the fucking Michael Mann Heat-esque conversation at the table during dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I think some of the only well-written exchanges in this movie are when there's like a domestic dispute, which makes me question like what's going on in the scriptwriter's personal life.
Maybe Mark Webb was having some issues.
But
Write this fucking dumb thing.
Probably not.
I'll look it up.
I think that's a really compelling tension that you know it's very similar to the Vulture storyline or the Green Goblin storyline, but I like when Peter and Spider-Man, those identities become bonded to a central third party.
Yeah.
But
Of course, like I said, Captain Stacy dies in what is a very confused sort of final act of this film. And
that's not even my problem, Tanner.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's not even my problem.
Abram, you let me you clued me into what your issue is. Tucker has the same issue, so you guys can talk about it. Let me hear.
No.
Okay,
I have
okay.
two problems.
Two
We're
problems.
going even further
Oh
back.
shit!
Oh
Two problems?
no! Oh no! Okay.
The Captain Stacy's police SWAT force are shooting like stun darts. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
One clips Peter. Peter is on the street surrounded by a SWAT team. He blacks out.
Mhm.
He's handcuffed.
Yeah.
His mask gets taken off. He activates Ultra Instinct mode, breaks the handcuffs, seriously hurts, arguably cripples an entire SWAT team.
Correct.
Says, "Hey, Captain Stacy, here I am." And he goes, "I like you now."
Yeah.
After there is no reason for Captain Stacy, especially now, to be on Peter's side.
You know,
Doesn't
that's
he-
actually a great point.
Doesn't he say that like Gwen's up in that building or whatever?
Sure, but he also just fucking attacked Captain Stacy's entire police force for basically no reason. It is a 180 that means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
As does the
I would go
promise.
even farther than that. Is like a 180 plus a 360. I don't know what fucking number that is, but like
It's-
A 720?
no, that's more than that.
540.
540.
Sure.
yes.
Okay, let's go with that. But I think you're right, especially when you consider that like it's not just that okay, he knows his daughter is in danger now. That's why he's doing that. But he already didn't like Spider-Man and didn't like Peter Parker. This isn't
Right.
fucking PEMDAS. It doesn't cancel out. Like he unveils his mask, and if there had been a connection between Peter and Peter Parker and Captain Stacy, it would have been like, oh wait, okay, but. So I actually kind of trusted this kid, and I know he's Spider-Man, so there's a trust that I can build there. But he already thought that Peter was a fucking scumbag idiot, so like he would actually hate him more when he revealed that as Peter.
Mhm.
That then enables the gunshot that does not matter.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then that you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Terrible, crazy.
But way
sequence,
worse. Okay, but hang
which
on.
doesn't make
We
no
have a very big,
spatial sense.
very big issue with that.
Before you get to that, though, I wanted to say that reveal is another where he takes off his mask, and another instance of Andrew Garfield mogging the camera edgily for all the he does one of these. He's behind like this, and he goes like he's fucking Dracula or something. But
Like he's Morbius.
maybe we should talk about how this might be in the Morbius universe, but we'll get to that at the end. We'll see. The crane thing. Who wants to take on the crane thing?
Is this the thing you have a problem with, Abram?
No.
Oh,
we're not
okay.
even there
We have a
yet.
very
Tucker.
big problem with the
Tucker,
crane
you
thing.
take it. You
Then
take
just
it.
take the crane.
Because so the problem with the crane thing is not that it doesn't make sense or would be fulfilling for the city to sort of team up with Spider-Man because they appreciate what he's doing and help him defeat the big bad. Sure, that's fine. And he's injured. He needs help. Okay. But the way that they decide to have the city help him is through like 3 layers of convoluted fucking nonsense.
Mhm.
Is for whatever fucking reason, there's just cranes everywhere in this city, like spaced out consistently every few blocks down this one street, and they need to turn them. Okay, that's stupid, but like it's a way for the city to work together, or whatever.
Mhm.
However, I
Here
want
we
you
go.
to think back to Spider-Man's physics and how he traverses around a city.
Uh-huh.
Now, he is frequently found traveling a straight path down a city between 2 rows of tall buildings. Now, there are 2 rows of tall buildings leading down to Oscorp. Spider-Man, the character, with the abilities that Spider-Man, the character, can use, can swing between 2 rows of tall buildings in a straight line perfectly fine. But for some reason, because he's hurt, I guess, he needs
The
cranes
cranes.
to help him go down a straight line.
How do the cranes help? They
They
don't.
don't help. He can do that already. He can travel in a straight line.
Oh Lord.
That's not even the best part of that is the insert shot of the cop on the bike on the street who stops traffic so Spider-Man can swing 15 feet above him.
And all of this came because coincidentally the kid that he saved was the son of the guy. So
Of the
'cause
crane
that's-
operator.
Of
the
one
reason
of the
they had
crane
to make
operators.
that exactly, and he just has every crane operator on speed
Mhm.
dial, and it's 10 p.m. at night, and all the crane operators are still at their fucking stations.
Oh yeah.
But the reason that connection is so frustrating to me is because this isn't just like a one-off character that he saved. It's the only character that he saved. They
Yeah.
had to tie it to this one specific moment because that's the only moment that Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, has done something that we've seen on screen that is worth like
Tucker's
someone
right.
helping him with.
And I didn't think about this. I mean, you can say like I think there's a woman in the alley when he first starts profiling long-haired blonde
But even
guys.
she's like, "Hey, wait, you're beating up these guys. Like, calm the fuck
What the
down."
hell's going on?
He
But yeah,
also was not
on-
saving her. He was going after the guy with the
True.
long hair.
That's a good point. But the bridge, he only saves that one kid. I guess maybe there's other people in those cars that he hangs down from the bridge, but he doesn't save the people inside. He just leaves. And
Unclear.
the high school completely empties out. That's the fastest fire drill I've ever seen happen in a high school. People are out of there in like 30 seconds. So he doesn't even save anyone in there. Hang on. He does technically save Stan Lee in that library because
Terrible cameo.
the lizard throws a table at it and he catches the table and uses it to hit the lizard again.
The thing is, I actually like that cameo, but I don't like it in this movie. I think it's a funny cameo that would work in the tone of an MCU movie if he was there, because like, oh, we expect these sort of one-off sort of funny joke moments to happen, but this movie has very poor comedy.
Yes.
And the comedic tone is especially not prevalent in that sequence that is supposed to be tense, but certainly isn't, because there's no stakes or no danger. And then, of course, after he does that, Peter just takes off his mask and is strolling through the fucking hallways and things like, holy shit, he has no regard for his secret identity in this fucking movie.
I've got one last point, then I want to stop talking about this fucking movie because
Okay, let's do it.
Any more of our time.
One more.
Captain Stacy's promise
Mm.
is
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
awfully handled. The promise, I get it. The dad wants to protect his daughter. Fine.
Mhm.
Peter
Well,
doesn't.
Abram, refresh my memory and maybe the memory of the audience here. What is his promise again? What is promise does Peter make or whatever?
That he will not involve Gwen Stacy.
Okay.
What does that mean? Peter interprets it to mean he can never even see Gwen Stacy ever again. He can't attend the funeral. He can again peek out from
Mhm.
above the fucking top of the courtyard house to like watch it, but he can't be there.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. He's mourning. This is what he thinks he has to do.
He's mourning this guy that he's not a fan of,
No.
Right.
instead of helping his girlfriend who's actually mourning.
He goes back to school.
Yes.
He daps up Flash Thompson.
They're friends now. I like that
They're
Flash
friends
has a
now.
character arc in this.
Only character with a character arc.
Yeah.
Peter is the only one in the hallway with Gwen. He looks at Gwen. He lets Gwen go. Gwen goes into the classroom. Peter inexplicably gets lost between the hallway and the classroom because he arrives very late. He is told that he is habitually late. He said it won't happen again. The teacher says, don't make promises you can't keep. That's when the audience is supposed to start standing up and shouting and cheering.
Uh-huh.
Because then Peter, sitting behind Gwen, goes, but those are the best kind. And then here's the problem with that.
Good God.
After he had the opportunity to address this issue with Gwen in an empty hallway, he chooses sitting behind her, 10 feet behind her. I can't even talk anymore, but I have to push through.
Yeah.
10 feet behind her in class to take the advice of a teacher whose class he's late to say, Gwen, I don't give a fuck what your dead father said to me. I'm going to date you. And then in the middle of the semester, the professor says, open your book to page 1, and the movie ends.
And of course, this also comes after a sequence where clearly Gwen is very frustrated by the fact that Peter has not talked to her, because she shows up at his house. She's like, what the fuck, man? And he's like, I made a promise your dad, law, closes the door. Like,
terrible.
Oh,
it was killing me.
Honestly, though,
I have nothing else to say.
Tanner was saying that he and I had the same issue. I didn't really think about that, but when you break down the progression of those sequences of events, it's fucking ridiculous. And it has no bearing on the character's arc, because that's a moment of contention, but then it's just resolved in the last frame of the film. And also, it's just like logically and human emotions wise, nothing tracks there.
I was checked out by that point, so Abram, thank you for bringing that up, because it is a complete refutation of like the emotional climax of the movie between him and the dying antagonist of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He's like, we came back together in the end, but just leave my daughter out of it. The good people always get hurt in these situations. So it's like, I will, Captain Stacy. And then at the very end of the movie, he's like, I'm gonna ignore your dad and I'm gonna bone you
in front of all his classmates.
In front of all his classmates, and then they opened a page 1 in the middle of the semester.
Let's score this fucking movie.
Let's score the movie. Okay. Everyone, pull it up. Everyone, get it out. Whew, I'm sensing a pretty close score here. I'm sensing a pretty close
interesting.
score.
I just can't tell. Like I came into this with really no clear obvious answer to how I was going to score it specifically. I think it's probably dropped during this discussion.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to see what both of you give it as well.
This radicalized me.
3.
My score's a lot lower than it would have been.
3, 2, 1. Okay. All right. What we have here is I'll go in descending order. I gave it a 3.3. Tucker gave it a 2.1, and Abram gave it a flat 2. So pretty united there. I will say
this might be the second lowest score that Abram's ever given, behind Crash.
Yeah, this is a historic day, really. But that of course averages out to a 2.5.
Very clean.
Yeah, very clean. Well below Spider-Man 3, which is our lowest movie, with a 6.2. It has now been replaced by The Amazing Spider-Man with a 2.5.
You'd have to near triple that.
Yeah. And you know what? The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is regarded as worse than the first, so...
It's all uphill from here.
But then we got the MCU ones, so we only got one more to go through, because thank God
You're
they
allowed
didn't
to
finish
review
this
good
trilogy.
movies as a treat.
Yeah. Maybe this is part of the Morbius universe. That's really all I wanted to say, is because as confused as this movie is, Morbius seems to be tenfold more confused as to which universe it belongs to. So God forbid we ever come back to this. Whew, this is a bad movie.
Possible, which is scary.
But
hey,
you know,
we get to complete it next week. It's not like this is like a 4-film fucking slog fest we have to get through. This is 2 movies back to back. Get them over with. Fucking like a shot of
bing bang boom. Yeah, like a shot of piss. Really is what this movie was like.
Abram, final thing.
My final thing is, these are the movies that the fucking Sony executive threw a sandwich at Kevin Feige over.
Yes.
These are the movies.
I kind of wanted to bring up the Sony leaked emails in this, because a lot of the aspects of this that we talked about were sort of talked about in those emails and leaked in those. But yeah. Oh, one of which is, I'll leave it on this. I'll leave it on this, dear viewers. We're watching Amazing Spider-Man 2 next week, in case you were wondering. But I'll leave you with this. Peter Parker, more like Peter Parkour. Thanks for watching, everyone.
What?
What?